Welcome to Breaking Down Mental Health with Dr. Jones. In these educational videos, Dr. Jones will discuss mental health diagnosis, clinical supervision, using technology in counseling, multiculturalism, and many other topics to help you get a healthy understanding of why mental health is important. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoy these videos.
We have a guest lecturer with us, and I am so excited and so ecstatic to have him here. We have Dr. Michael Jones with us, and he is going to talk about telebehavioral health with us and all of the things. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to jump right into it, y'all. So go ahead, Dr. Jones. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Dr. Jones. I've been in this space of telemental health for, going on 14 years now. So I started practicing telemental health about 14 years ago. I've been training people in telemental health for about 10 years now. So roughly I train about 700 people a year and continue to do so in telemental health, and also on the ACA Ethics Committee, and to talk about telemental health. So this is one of those things I'm pretty passionate about and excited to have an opportunity to talk to y'all about that today. So
yeah, you are the go-to. I'll say for me, I know my guru when I think, like literally when I think about telehealth and telemental health, and even like the changes and advances in it, you are the first person that comes to my mind just when I think about all of the work that you've done and the knowledge that you have behind it, and even the platforms and all that good stuff. So anytime I think about that, or that comes up, literally, I think about you. So I'm just honored to have you here today, and that you had time to stop and talk to us for a little bit.
Gotcha.
So I'm gonna hush and let you kind of start. And I know we said that this will kind of be a dialogue and we go in and everything, but I'll let you get started.
Gotcha. No, I think it's important for us as we think about telemental health, especially here in 2022. A lot of people think this is like something that is new, that it just started a couple of years ago. The reality is telemental health has been out since like the 50s, and we don't really think about that. We're very used to phone-based counseling or crisis hotlines and things like that. And so that's really kind of how all this really got started many years ago. Was people were in a crisis, they called a crisis hotline, talked to someone about that. And that was like the beginnings of how we got to the place that we're in now. And there's been a lot, I would say, some milestones we've seen in telemental health that kind of helped us to get to where we are. They've created programs. There was a program, a computer program they created back in the 70s. It was called Perry, and it was basically a program that mimicked someone who dealt with paranoid schizophrenia. And they had another program that mimicked someone who was trained in CBT. And so they basically had a conference where they had these two computers going back and forth. One was CBT and one who was doing mimicking a client with paranoid schizophrenia. And this is once again, this is back in the 60s and 70s. And so when we talk about telemental health, this is something that has been developing over time, where we're seeing the advances that have come to where we are right now. But a lot of time has been put into that, and we're seeing more and more research that's coming out, and it helps us see that this is not new, but our approach to it is different, and knowing how to do it in the right way has been a big struggle for a lot of people. So hopefully we can kind of get into that a little bit today. One of the things I want to cover, the kind of big things I want to talk about, is just like there's some different ways people go about doing it. I know we talk about asynchronous and synchronous abilities to be able to connect with people. There are a lot of ways people do that. Synchronous, that's when we're doing it in live. The client's present at the same time I'm present, or asynchronous is like I'm not present at the same time they are. And so you see people doing and connecting with through telemental health that way. And so it may be there's services out there where people may do email-based counseling, where I send something out to my therapist. My therapist reads it. They get a certain amount of time where they can connect back with me, and we have this asynchronous way of being able to connect with each other. Or it could be something that's video based, where we're on video, something similar to Zoom, where we're able to connect that way, or whether it's through phone or whether it's through texting. And so But all these are just some different ways for us to be able to connect with our clients and meeting them meeting them where they are for their needs, to make sure they're getting the things they need to be able to get as they are connecting with each other in that space. And so that's an important piece, is that there are a lot of ways to go about doing this, but once again, finding what's right and what fits for everyone, it makes a big difference. um and I know this is a conversation we've had before, and it's just that as we think about telemental health, one of my passions is about multiculturalism and social justice, and just one, and I think it's important for us to realize that those two things we always come into play, regardless of what type of counseling we're talking about. Those are things we have to consider if we're going to be talking about getting to this space and learning how to work through all of that. One of the things that's blows my mind is that we're in 2022, and there's still 27.6 million people who don't have home internet, and this is in the midst of a pandemic. And when you imagine, okay, this would get better, but we still have that many people who don't even have internet at home. And so when it comes to them being able to get some type of mental health services, regardless of video, whatever the case may be, they don't have they don't have the ability to be able to connect with anybody. And so you have this big portion of people who don't end up having an opportunity to connect with people. And usually when we look at what these people look like, these are people from lower socioeconomic status, individuals who need services, who need to be able to connect with somebody. But once again, they don't have services. They don't even have internet at home. And so how do they do that? We even seen over 265,000 people still have dial-up service. Now, I thought we'd be well beyond that at this time, but we still have people who have dial-up. And so with that, you can't even connect well enough to do any type of service if I'm still waiting for the AOL CD to come into the mail,
Right. It's funny that you say that, because I asked my husband the other day, I said, do people I wonder how many people still have a house phone, right? Or how much longer do you think it will be before house phones, are just really no longer in existence? And so hearing you say that, I didn't even know that dial-up still existed. I didn't know.
And yeah, and the sad part about it, a lot of those places, when you think about it, are in southern rural places who are still dealing with that. Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, those are your top three states where, when it comes to being able to connect online, whether it's not having services at all or have dial-up, those are your top three states that are dealing with that. And so when you have these populations where they're lower socioeconomic status, or whatever the case may be, and they don't have access to services, it's no wonder we see some of the mental health issues that are going on in these communities, because they don't have anybody to reach out to. And
Right.
so to me, it kind of compounds the problem. And it's almost like, well, we'll go get fixed, we'll go see a therapist. Well, it's easy for me to go do that because I have access to certain things, but when they don't have the opportunity even to connect, how do you get the services you need when there's no service even provided in your area?
Right. That makes me think. And if y'all remember, if you watched week one's lecture, but we had Dr. Jones came, Kent Butler came, our current ACA president. But we've been talking too a lot about privilege and marginalization, right? And so even thinking about the privilege of having access to the internet, right? And so folks may say, oh, I live in an area where there are really no therapists in my town. I have to go over to the next town. Like, they can still access and get there. But what about people who don't have anyone in their town, and they don't have, like you're talking about, some way to connect to a therapist, right? And so, like you said, where does it put that? It just made me even think about privilege and marginalization when it comes to internet access.
And privilege is significant. And I'm going to just give you a real practical example. My family and I, we moved last summer. We just moved maybe 2 or 3 miles. And I'm going to use air quotes for this. We moved to the good part of town, for lack of a better term. I liked where I live. But one of the things we noticed that is that just 2 or 3 miles down the road to get internet service, I had one provider that I could get access to, and it was very expensive. But
Wow.
literally, if I look at my front yard right now, they're digging up and putting in new lines where now I have 4 different options for internet service, and it's cheaper here
Mm.
than just a mile and a half down the road. Where and so that so that, and I realize in that way I'm privileged that way, and where when there's people literally in the same town I live in who don't have access at all, and I'm sitting here looking at my options of which one do I want. Do I want to have 1,000 gigabytes download speed, or not? Like I'm trying to figure out my options on how fast I want it when they're looking at how do I even get online at all. And so we're seeing there's a big disparity, and there's a lot of privilege that's based beyond on that.
Yeah. Wow. It's something that definitely, make you think about it when we're talking about just even again that accessibility piece. Because sometimes not even just students, like we may fail to think about and realize how all of this still encompasses multiculturalism and social justice and advocacy. Because folks sometimes don't think, they're like, oh, telehealth, we've made it accessible now for people to get therapy. But then it also excluded a lot of people, especially when COVID hit, and now they perhaps can't go into their provider. And now it excluded a lot of folks because of that too.
Hmm. For sure, definitely. And this kind of and that also connects me to kind of think about looking at what COVID and how that ended up affecting people with telehealth. This time last year, or what I wouldn't say last year, was it? I'll say probably like it's
Right.
been going on for
It's all a
yeah,
blur now. Only one
yeah.
is
It's like
clear. Are we still in this, right?
yeah, I feel like it's been going on for 10 years. What would you say when it started? One of the things I noticed was that we had so many people who jumped online to do telemental health because they didn't have a choice,
Mhm.
but to do telehealth, but people weren't prepared. And so when you think about that, those professional competencies and what the code of ethics talks about, we have people who were providing services that they were not trained in. And so I always talk, when standard H1A talks about, basically having confidence in the areas in which you are, in the things you are doing. And for many people, they may jump on, I won't use any company names, anything like that, but they would jump on, they would take like a 3-hour course, and now I'm trained. But competence is more than just knowing something. Competence is like, I know this stuff and I have practice under my belt as well to know that I know the best practices of doing this. And so we had a lot of people who jumped on board who were practicing online, who are still doing it to this day. And when it comes to formalized training, is so all over the board on whether, okay, do I take a graduate level course, which a lot of places aren't even doing that? Do I just take some continuing education hours? And if I do, how many do I do it? The people that's doing the training, how are they actually trained in this stuff, or this is just something they're doing for as well? And so those professional competencies become a big issue, because there's a lot of legal stuff that's tied up in that, and people just aren't grasping the fact that there's some basics we have to know to make sure we're actually doing right in this space and we're protecting the public. That's number one. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. Because one of the things I tell students is it's our responsibility to know our code of ethics, not our clients, right? Like they are not held to our code of ethics, right? And telehealth guidelines, we are. And I remember I was thinking back too, because even now, like you said, there's one thing to be trained and there's a difference to be competent in that.
Mhm.
And so I can say, oh, I took this 3-hour training course and, here we are. But a lot of people, again, they were forced into it when COVID hit, and that was, just what happened. And so I guess requirements were reduced during this time, again, to help folks. But, even still the question that comes up, and it made me think about that time many years ago, I messaged you. I don't know if you remember it or not, but I Facebook messaged you, and I was like, I got a quick question. Can I see a client in Chicago, and I'm licensed here. And I feel like I knew the answer was no, but you guided me into why that answer was no, right? And so it's about licensure. Is it like where they are or where I am, and how does it work? And I feel like even now people are still asking that question. And clients don't know. I have clients that'll call our practice from all over wanting to be seen. And I had a lady after I was on Housewives of Atlanta. And so of course we're getting all these people wanting to work with me, right? And a lady was like, but I'm I don't know, in Kansas and I want to see you. I need to see you. I said, well, I'm not licensed in Kansas. I can't see you, right? It's just like, I can't find any providers. I need to see you. I am in Georgia. I can't see you, but it's telehealth. I cannot see you, right? And so having to try to explain that and helping clients understand that, that it's even the licensure piece and the portability piece. And so as you talk about the difference between training and competence and knowledge, right? And that awareness and all of that that comes up in it when we're talking about telehealth is critical, really.
Yeah. And as you're talking about, especially talking about people across state lines, things like that. And I think we've overcomplicated something that we really could make simple if we break it down. People. I'll give you a couple of scenarios. Someone may say, "Well, I'm on vacation in so and so," and that first question, I'm like, "Why are you seeing clients on while you're on vacation?"
Right.
Why would you be doing that? But when we go back to the code of ethics, it looks at us, it talks to us about, okay, making sure we're checking with the states that we're in.
Mhm.
But once again, it's at the time of the appointment. So it doesn't really make a difference where I'm licensed at. I'm licensed in Arkansas. I'm licensed in two or three different states. But I need to be concerned about where I'm at physically at the time of the appointment and where the client is physically at the time of the appointment. And am I licensed in both those places? And if the answer is no on either one of those, I need to do some work, because at the end of the day, if I'll just make up an example, if I'm in Arkansas and I'm seeing somebody in Oklahoma, or if I'm seeing somebody in Georgia and I'm not licensed in Georgia, if I mistreat that client or if I do something that's unethical to the client, who can the client go to
Mhm.
about for their protection? They can't go to the state of Georgia because I'm not licensed in Georgia.
Right.
But and they can't, they can try to come to the state of Arkansas, but I wasn't in that. We'll just say I wasn't in that state at the time I did it. So it's like it puts the clients in more of a risk at that point. And so my thing is, I'm always going to go back to what is best for the client, not what's best for me as a clinician. And I think as we think about that more, that's going to help us out quite a bit on when it comes to kind of navigating the waters of telemental health. And the thing about it, we're not the only therapists that are out there. There are so many good clinicians out there that we can make connections with, and there's plenty to go around, I promise. I think that. So it's more of us connecting people with those people in their area versus us trying to do something that's convenient for us. I think there is convenience in telemental health, but let the convenience be for the client and what's best for them, and not what's necessarily best for us.
Right. And they've heard me talk a lot in lectures too, when we're talking about like professional identity, making connections with other clinicians and networking and marketing and all of that other stuff, right? Like I can, probably not all of the states, but I can name some therapists, right, in quite a few states. And so, like you said, I don't have to do all the things and be all the things, and especially putting myself or my client in a compromising position. How can I get them to someone? And so that's that whole piece about just counseling relationships, but professional relationships and identity too.
Mhm. And I like the emphasis that you're putting on identity, because I think it's important for us to, we talk about networking, we talk about consulting, all these things like that. But I think it's important for us to make sure we're actually doing that. That,
Yeah.
someone calls me, they're saying, "Hey, I'm in Atlanta. I know people down there." So it's important for me to make sure that I am connecting with people and have those connections in other states where I can make referrals. I literally last night, one of my former therapists called me and said, "Hey, are you taking people right now because they're full?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've got some open slots." And then when I get full, I have no problem saying, "Call this agency, call this agency." But I think it's when we kind of we get in this mentality of I have to be the person that sees them. Then the question is why.
Right. What is that
Yes,
about? Right.
yeah. And so it's more important for me to make sure I'm getting the client connected with the right person. So to me, that's important. It's like, that with confidence, is that those connections, is getting them connected with the right people, and also with the right technology as well. There's so much software out there now for us to connect with people, The problem is we're not always using what is right to connect people. I don't know how many people last year was saying, "Hey, I've got FaceTime." I'm like, "Great, don't use it though."
Right, right. Your choice are, you better not, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like, well, I got Zoom. Well, do you have the right kind of Zoom? Things
Exactly.
of that nature. And so just making sure that we are using HIPAA secure software to be able to connect with people makes a big, big difference because the ACA code goes on that. Also, so that's a legal issue. HIPAA fines are no joke
Mhm.
for
Like
and
$10,000 a violation or something.
yeah, and those were stuff that you didn't know you were breaking, and if you're
Right. That's
doing
the
the
minor
purpose,
stuff.
yeah, exactly, it gets higher and higher, and so people just don't realize that we have a big responsibility to make sure that we are providing services in a way that are safe for the client because as a therapist, I have my own therapist, and I want to make sure that they are taking care of me in the right way, and that my information is not going to be out there, and so I want to make sure I'm doing the exact same thing for my clients and making sure their information is protected as well. So just making sure we're using the right type of technology in the right way. And then I'll talk about this in a minute. Social media is a whole nother topic, which I'll definitely get to in just a second. But I think that the right type of technology, I think, is just making sure we're HIPAA secure software and making sure we're following that because the penalties they can get you. They can get you
Right.
big time on that.
I thought, and I know you're going to move on, so I just want to say this really quickly. It made me
Yeah.
also think about, like, you're talking about using the right type of technology. We're talking about accessibility, social, all advocacy and things like that. But it makes me think about too, like how some of the platforms you would have to download, the app to even in order to even be able to use it to do some of that telehealth, right? And so I I think too with COVID hit a lot of places kind of changed up how a lot of platforms rather changed that because I was looking at something that's like, oh, you don't have to download. They can just click this link now and they can get to you through Doxy or, whatever platform you may have been using. And I can recall before that not necessarily being the case. Like you had to download, this and that and the third. But then you think about what about those people who don't have their own cell phone or computer or whatever they can't, or they may be there, I don't know where they may be. Can they really download this? Do they have the ability to do that? And so it just again makes me think about where we were then, where we were, where we've gone and where we are now, and hopefully what that will look like as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, there has to be a change on that because not everyone is computer
Right.
literate, and if you're not computer literate, then that causes more. Once again, I'm already coming to therapy because something's not going right, and now you're telling me I've got to figure out how to download how to enable cookies, and all these different things like that. That is
Right.
not stuff that I know how to do, and they're just trying to talk to somebody. And so,
Right.
yeah, so I think, making it, like I said, I think accessibility becomes a big issue in making sure we are using stuff that is very easy for people to get connected with. That way they can get on it and get it and be seen as quick as possible. And so, like, so I'm super picky about that type of software that I don't want my clients to have to download anything because
Mhm.
that's not going to help them in the long run. So,
Exactly.
like I said, making it easy for them. Now, social media, I'll try to spend too much time because I love talking about social media. But one of the big things we're seeing with social media is that specifically with the code of ethics is talking about our social presence on when it comes to us presenting ourselves. One is making sure we have two different identities online. One is our professional identity, and then one is our personal identity we have online. And a lot of people mix those two things in together, and that's not healthy for that to happen. Because what happens now is that I now have clients who are connecting with me through my personal, and there's certain thing personal is none of their business. I don't want them in that part of my life. And so on my professional site, for my private practice, I have a professional thing. If they send me a message on there, I don't mind responding to them and saying, hey, give me a phone call tomorrow, things like that. But if they find me online on my personal one, I keep that separate. Even if they send me a message, I'm not responding to those things because I don't want those lines crossed whatsoever between personal and professional. So there's been times where I've had to block clients, different things like that, and create my own social media policy that says, "Hey, We can't be friends online. If can't be friends with your mama or anybody like that. We just, yeah, we had to draw some lines in the sand on things on what I'm able to do and how we're going to maybe connect through social media, because so many people are found themselves getting themselves in trouble and losing licenses and stuff like that over things I feel like are really basic, because they did not know how to put up good, strong boundaries for themselves as clinicians. And we're advocating for our clients to have boundaries, but we're not practicing them ourselves.
Mhm.
That becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a stickler about that. And even when I like if I'm messaging you in message, I think the first thing I said, I'm so sorry to message you here. I thought I had your number in my phone and I don't, because still to me, this is your personal page. You don't want to hear about work, or work related stuff. So first it's like, I'm so sorry for, messaging you, that's thought I had your phone. But I shut that down. No, like you said, I can't be friends with your mama's cousin. And if I know that I am, somebody's getting blocked. And it's one of those things. And it's just to, again, have that boundary for them and for us, and to be able to separate, right? You don't want, I even on my company Facebook page, I turned off the ability for people to message, right? Because again, it's our duty to know our code of ethics, not our clients or potential clients. And they may feel like, hey, I can reach out to a therapist here on this and talk and things. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of turned it and said, hey, if you're looking at, definitely reach out to the office. One, I know our phone system is HIPAA compliant, right? And I know that it's less risk for it to be hacked. And two, versus perhaps we're communicating in Messenger and things like that. So, or LinkedIn. I've had people reach out on LinkedIn and I'm like, no, don't do it to me. Don't do it. But yeah, sorry about it. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. No, you're good. Good. I just think whatever the newest code of ethics come out it needs to say stay out of the DMs. So I think that'd be the easiest thing to do.
Don't
And I think
slide
we're
in my
good.
DMs. Don't
Yeah,
behave.
exactly.
Get me in these DMs. Don't do nothing in these DMs.
Exactly. One thing I've seen that's been an issue, and going back to the code as well, is that there is a need to know, or at least we feel like there's a need to know as a therapist about our clients prior to them coming in. And
Hmm.
so what we'll do is I'm gonna use my air quotes again, we're researching our clients before they come in, and the code is saying, no, you can't do that. That, even though they have a public social media presence, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, whatever the case may be, we can't go on our clients' social media to find out things about them
Right.
without their permission. And the reason why that is I just give you a real quick example. I was doing a training for it was an inpatient. It was actually a facility for like juveniles who got themselves in trouble, things of that nature. And one of the juveniles there has stolen a cell phone from one of the staff, and so at night it was from the clinical staff, and so every night that kid was going on Facebook Live on that staff cell phone, and so they were talking about, yeah, we've been trying to go online to catch them, and I was like, you can't do that. And it's like, but this is a criminal thing. I said, it's also an ethical thing that they're your client. You can't go on the social media thing. You can't do that to research them or find out anything. And I've seen other people will do that. Well, before they take a client, they go and do research. But think about, that's not the thing about it. There's some things our clients don't want to tell us prior to them coming in. And so my thing is, according to the code, leave that alone. They choose to tell it, they could be coming in for substance use issue, and they could be going live, showing themselves at a party, drinking, things like that. But if they haven't told you that personally, that's none of our business. So we have to respect that part of our clients there, and respect their privacy on that. Nothing, just talking about some of the nuances of online counseling to think about. The body language, and I'm smiling because I have a story about that. Just body language is a big deal. Even where we are right now, we see about this much of everybody. Like they come into my office, I get everything. But the reality is you do lose some of that, but that doesn't mean that you still can't try to pick up on body language of a client. We got to make sure that we are still trying to look out for those things that can show what's going on in the client's mind, what the moods are going through, things like that. Um, I can remember doing a couple session, and we're on a video. I got both of them on there, and then I guess the husband said something he shouldn't have said. He went, "Oh," and I was like, "What happened?" Well, he said, "She just kicked me." Well, if we had been in like an on ground environment, I would have picked up on that. But since we're online, I didn't pick up on that. And so we just have to, I think, just think in this modality, we have to be more mindful of body language and being able to pick up on those type of things. Um, because it's just important to do that.
I
And
have a
also
question
just,
for
oh,
you.
sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, do you think more given, look, as we say, the sign of the times, more universities will incorporate, I don't know, telehealth counseling, a part of their curriculum to teach that? Because, I'm just thinking about the theories. I'm thinking about how we talked about those counseling skills and we're training students, right? And we think about, oh, like you said, Gestalt, we're going to pay attention to this body language. We're going to do this. Or are you noticing that they're twiddling their thumbs? And all of that we can't see. And so I train my interns, pay attention to inflection in the tone. If the tone changes, pay attention to how perhaps their head may turn or that they slump down, things like that. Because like you said, this is all we can see. And so they have to be able to, are you paying attention to facial expressions? Are you paying attention to where their eyes go when you ask a particular question? So I just wonder, do you think that'll be something that schools do to now train students, because this is now not going to go anywhere?
Yeah, I definitely see that. I'm not seeing all the new K-Crep stuff that's coming out, but I know the telemental health piece is being changed. I know in certain states you're required to have a class actually in telemental health at the graduate level in order to get licensed. And so I think as time begins to progress on, we're going to see more and more classes specifically just on telehealth at the master's level, so that when people come out, because used to for a lot of people it's a specialty area, but when
Right.
everybody's doing it, this is no longer a specialty. This is a requirement.
When
And
I
so
first took it, yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I was
Oh
just
no,
saying,
you're
when
good.
I first did it was what, the DC, the distance
It was
credential count, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a DCC back then, then it was the BC, TMH, and then
Yeah,
everybody and their cousin has some type of training they want to do now. And the problem is there's not any consistency in any of the trainings that are out there. And then also the people who are teaching those classes, a lot of them aren't practicing anymore. So they're teaching something they've not done. So
right.
that's the one thing we're going to see a lot uh of change coming about. And so yeah, I do foresee that being something that's going to be start being taught at the master's level. And even with my students right now, as when we do we do online and everything, and we're doing a field experience. A lot of them are doing online counseling and things like that and practicing online. So this is kind of a crash course in online therapy. And so I'm just kind of helping them to see that this is a skill that you need to have anyway. So yeah, do your
Right.
internships, do your stuff on ground, get good at doing this as well, because this is not going away ever. It just really is not. No, another thing I just talking about is just a relationship online. And that's for, like, for me example, I have 100% online counseling practice, and so I don't see anybody on ground anymore. And so that's one of the things I'll begin telling people when I start with them is like, hey, I do video only. Is that something you're comfortable with? And they said they want to try it out. And so I have to make sure that I'm spending a little bit more time on that rapport building. And we talk about rapport building quite a bit in counseling, but I spend a lot more time doing that because they don't really know anything about me when they see me and they come into my office. But when they see me on video, they even know even less about me. And so I try to spend a lot more time putting things out there about myself so they can understand me as a person, as a clinician, so I can build that rapport with them, so we can have that connection, and so that we can things can move forward, and we can have a connection with each other, because some people still are a bit leery about telemental health, and I can definitely understand that. And so I do want to make sure that them to feel as confident as possible in this space, so they can make sure that they are being able to talk about whatever's going on inside their head there.
Do you find that to be so, since we're talking about just even like multiculturalism and an infusion and things, do you find that to be more difficult, easy, or about the same when you are, because I tell the students like multiculturalism is at the forefront of everybody is different, even if they look just like you, right? Do you find that to be different being solely telehealth, and how do you incorporate still like this multiculturalism and telehealth and building rapport and things like that?
Yeah, I have found it to be different just because um all they know about me is what I've told them. And so my website has changed significantly since I've gone online. And so I want my voice to be heard quite a bit different in my on my website, so that they can get a better understanding of who I am before they get in contact with me. And I will spend a little bit more time talking about me as a person, whenever we're kind of trying to build rapport with each other and things of that nature, and that helps out quite a bit. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like that has been different, but I still definitely think you can infuse the multiculturalism and bring those things to note as we're talking about it. I've one thing it's been a good shift for me, but I've noticed I have a lot more people of color who are coming to me for therapy because now they don't have to be in. I can see anybody in my entire state now, and so
Yeah.
they have somebody that looks like me, and so uh, like some of your students may or may not get this as much as fine, but I'm having a conversation with my student, one of my clients about the 3 6 Mafia verses from a few weeks ago. That was for them. Music, it was a big thing. It was a big thing for them, and they grew up listen to that group, and so. So we spent about 5 or 10 minutes talking about that because that kind of built a bridge there that okay, now am I somebody that looks like them? We have some similar interests as well, and so they were able to connect with that quickly. And so when I'll make references throughout the session or about different things, or and they get that quickly, and they feel like I'm being heard,
Yeah.
and so I'm building instant credibility with individuals depending on whatever culture they come from and things of that nature, because we're able to connect on those things. And once again, they see me more as a human and not just this box on the screen. And so I feel like more time is spent doing that, but I feel like that it's been better in this environment to do that because it's going to make that connection, and they feel a lot more comfortable coming in and talking to me this way.
I'm glad you mentioned that because literally the lecture before this one is on creativity and counseling. And I spent a lot of time talking about how we connect to our clients and understanding what we can about their culture and those things that what we can know. And so one of the things I talk about is the use of music in counseling. And so hearing you talk about the verses, right, and 3 6 Mafia and things like that is another way of using creativity, but infusing and addressing those things that are important to our clients so that we can use that to help them. And especially given in a time where we are with telehealth and we don't have all of those other ways that we may build rapport or the client get to know about us, or even, and again, it could just be them seeing your body language, them seeing your degrees on the wall and say, oh, okay, he went to here. Oh, I got family out there, or just something like that. Like they don't have any of that. And so being able to do that. So I'm glad you mentioned that as a way as well. And
Yeah,
using it in telehealth. Because sometimes
exactly.
they can't figure out how to use creativity or adapt all of the things that they would do in office, right, to now this virtual world.
Yeah, I know I use a lot of humor just in my personal life, also in my professional life too. That's one thing I've noticed, regardless of what culture you come from, people enjoy being able to laugh at something and
Yeah.
being able to, and people enjoy being able to smile. You might even know the same language as somebody, but a smile is universal, a laugh is universal. And so being able to integrate that into your counseling, if that fits your personality and if it fits the situation, obviously, I've seen that been very helpful in building rapport because it kind of once again it helps them to see I'm a real person just like they are. I make mistakes just like they do, things of that nature. And when you bring it to the table, it does change how I connect with them big time. So yeah, so definitely one of those things that is brought to the table there.
Good. Thank you for that.
And that's and at least the last thing on my mind, like I said, if there's anything else specific you want to bring up, we can definitely talk about. Is just to think about our crisis management, for example. It's important to make sure that we are knowing that crisis online looks significantly different than crisis on ground. When my clients come into my office, when I used to have an on ground office, if they were in crisis, I could pick up the phone and I can call all these different places and be able to connect with people. And that was pretty simple. But now with telehealth, I have to do a lot more homework on my clients' areas they live in to make sure I know, okay, where's the community mental health center in that area? Who is the police, the fire station, different things like that, and had this working list literally on my computer. So when I'm meeting with somebody who's in the southern part of my state or the western part of my state or what case may be, I have all those things together to be able to connect with them, and that way it's helping them to be able to know here's a way for me to connect with them when they are in crisis. And so because the crises are going to occur, so a couple of things I'm looking for is, okay, at the beginning of every session I want to know, okay, where are you at
Yeah.
in this session? Because like last time I saw you, you were in this room, and this is the room you use. Now this room looks different, or you're outside someplace. And so I'm always trying to make sure I know I'm documenting where they are at every session, because that's going to help me to know, well, I'm at work, but where is work? I need to know what, give me an address. Yeah. So, and all those things are going to be super important for me to know all that. And so there is a little bit more with legwork with dealing with the crisis, but I want to make sure I can still provide those services for them if at all possible. But once again, having that knowledge base of where are you, those type of things, because it helps out with a crisis quite a bit.
And two, and like communicating that, because one of the things that happened when we went telehealth, or if you solely went telehealth during COVID, right? But especially, I don't think prior to that we could blur out our backgrounds and screens, and so it invited us into people's homes and invited people into our homes if we were working from home, right?
Yes.
And so I may see a picture on their wall that I may or may not care for, right? They may see something on my wall that they may or may not. And so even asking that, but I tell my clients, and especially if they're going to be solely telehealth, and you're right, like it expanded. Like I could see people now all throughout Georgia versus just the few counties, in my area. Now we can see everyone, but I would say, hey, I'm going to ask you. And it's not that I'm just being nosy or this or that, it's for your safety and mine too, so I can know. And so, like you said, well, where is work? And they may call, oh, can I do my session from work? Yeah, that's fine. Just where, so I'll know if something happens. And so sometimes I may directly say, where are you in your house right now? Whose house are you at? And sometimes I may say, oh, the wall looks different back there. Oh, I like that picture. Where is that? Where are you? Because I'm now not trying to not make them feel like I'm being, again, as invasive, because here I am in their home, I'm in their space, but I also want to know in case something does happen, if we get disconnected, if someone knocked on your door, now your screen went out, like, where are you and what happened?
Exactly. Yeah, so that, and I like the way you put that. I really haven't thought about that. We are in their home now, and I and so setting up some rules for those type of things. So like with my clients, so you wouldn't lay down when you come into my counseling office. I don't want you laying down in the bed. When you're doing your counseling session, if I do counseling like from home, like I'm doing this right now, I make sure my door is locked. I got my headphones in. That way, the only thing that people can hear is just what's coming out from on my end of the screen. They're not hearing what my client is saying. And so there's some aspects of that, and just hey, substance use, things like that. If you're going to be coming to a session, you can't smoke weed or smoke or whatever case. I just try to help them to understand. I am, like you said, I'm coming into your space, but in order for me to come to your space, we
Right.
have to have a place where it's going to be conducive to us doing that. So if the kids are running around, you want to have to lock them out for a little bit, or whatever the case may be. You may have to. I have some clients who will meet me in their driveway,
Yes.
and so yeah, in the garage. I was like, and so whatever is going to work for them, I want to do that, but it has to be a place where we on both ends where there is a it's safe for everybody, so they can get what they're needing out of it, and they can be able to talk freely just like they would if they would come into my office there.
Right. Right. And I think that's that part that still goes too with just one is like knowing our clients, again, their culture and culturism, diversity, but even like that social justice piece, because it may look different from client to client, where they have to sit and do sessions. And I know sometimes we can be real sticklers and like, no, you're going to do it this time and sitting right here and doing this. And I'm like, but that may not always be the case. So as long as they're safe, as long as they're I've had a client, and it really, I felt some type of way because again, it was just still the stigma, right? And telehealth has allowed people, because it may be like, I don't want to be seen walking into a counselor's office, but telehealth has allowed them to not be seen, right? But I had a lady, this was right, everybody thought we were going to go back to work or back in office when COVID hit. We were like, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Oh, I'll see you next month. And here we are, right? Like still trying to open back up, some of us. But I remember a lady saying, this box I can't do. It feels, she said, it feels like I'm on a dating app or something. But what she was doing, she was going to the Walgreens and parking behind the Walgreens to do her phone session.
Wow.
And it wasn't because her home wasn't safe and, she didn't have a safe spot. It was really stigma, still a lot of stigma that was associated with it. And she didn't want to have to explain to anyone, which is why she parked behind the Walgreens, right? She didn't want to have to explain to anyone who she was talking to and why. And so it still makes me think about we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go when it comes to this and making sure that we are looking at it from the multicultural lens, but still, again, where our positionality is in context with our client's positionality too.
Exactly. And I think that, and the more that we are aware of that and honor that for our clients, I think that once again, I think it's going to help us to be able to connect with them on a much deeper level than what we think that we can do in this online space. There's so many research studies out there that talk about how online counseling, telemental health counseling is just as effective as on ground. But I think, and I appreciate that, but there's work that goes into that. It doesn't automatically happen just because I turn the camera on. There's work we put into that, and so I want to respect that person who wants to park behind Walgreens to do their session. I want to respect the person who wants to do it from their driveway, whatever the case may be. But everything is done from a place of I hear you, I see you, and I want to make sure I'm honoring you. And so these are things I'm going to do to make sure you're being honored in this process.
Exactly. And one of the things I just wanted to point out, we think telehealth, a lot of times people think video, right? But we need to understand, like you said earlier, that can be the phone. That can be, if you are emailing a client, you have engaged in telehealth. Some platforms allow for texting or chat, like all of that is still considered telehealth. So you talking on a regular, a landline, as we were saying earlier, is telehealth. And so we have to make sure that, again, we understand and we're encompassing and figuring out what this has to look like for us as well as for our clients. Anything else you want to share with us? This has been amazing. And I think it's been, very eye-opening, especially for those who will watch this and have had no idea, about telehealth and telehealth from a multicultural and diversity lens. But also as we are moving forward, maybe some of the students have or will have, once they're in practicum, this experience with telehealth, but I think it opens our eyes to, again, even more. We think in certain box terms, right? But it makes us think outside of the box of those things that we need to do, and how it's ever evolving, which goes back into that cultural humility piece that I always talk to them about, that this is a journey. It is ever evolving, and we can't say that we've arrived, right? We have this final destination. It's still going. And I think that's what telehealth will continue to look like too, because things will still be going, and we have to look at it from a multicultural and diversity lens too. And advocacy. Why we still have places, people with no internet access, and not because like, oh, it's rural and there's literally no way to get it. But like you're saying, I'm just thinking about kids that were having to go to the McDonald's for Wi-Fi, right? When they needed to do home, when everybody went, sheltered in place. And I'm just like, or, the viral picture, I think the kids were in front of the Taco Bell, but sitting outside because they couldn't be in there all day. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so I take my boys to karate during the week. And they don't have they don't have public internet, or the karate studio doesn't have a guest Wi-Fi, right? And so I used to use my phone as my mobile hotspot to get some work done while I was there. And I just noticed, Dr. Jones, probably within the last month, so the Xfinity thing comes up and it said, usually you could only connect to the Xfinity Wi-Fi if you were already an Xfinity customer. But I just noticed about a month ago that now, and maybe it's just my area, I don't know, but it allows people to connect whether you're a customer or not now. So they can have Wi-Fi access. So I don't know where it all is in Georgia and things like that, but I noticed that. And so now I don't even have to log into my Xfinity account to connect to Wi-Fi while I'm out there. But there again, like I was saying, just that advocacy piece and the social justice piece of what does that really look like when we're talking about telehealth, and just from a different lens.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you on the advocacy piece. I mean, it's amazing. We can put somebody on the moon, but we still got to dial up. I just
Right.
that blows my mind, that we're still at that place. And like I said, I think until we in try not to go on a soapbox here, but I just think when
Hold back.
I just think we have to get better priorities when it comes to spending for things like that, because it affects so many things, and we have a big populations of people who, number one, when we look at telehealth, people I think it was just from a couple of years ago, they were saying 86% of the people who were coming and getting into telehealth was the first time they'd ever been in counseling before.
Yeah.
So there's a need, there's a huge need for that. But if I don't have access to the ability to come in, we have people who have mental health problems and things they're struggling through. And there's people out there who can see them, but they don't have access. And my thing is like, we all need access. It's
Yeah.
like, if it was my mom or a parent or any loved one, I want them to have access to a hospital or anything like that. Mental health is just as important, and we need to make sure that we're advocating to make sure that this is happening everywhere, so
Right.
that we can, once again, that stigma can go away, that mental health gap can go away, and we can start seeing change in our society, because we realize the more people who have access and are getting help, it's not just affecting them, it's affecting their households and everything else, which affects society. And so I think that's why we're both in this field. We want to see change. We want to see global change, but it starts on some local level things that have to happen. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna shut up now.
Almost, he's actually lectured for us, but he talked about just the systemic issues, right? But the not your Dr. John, Dr. Ford guest lectured for us, but talking about just again those micro levels, right? The things we can do on our very community local levels, those micro levels, to get us to that macro system change. And that's, like you said, that's why we're here.
Exactly.
That's what we're trying to do. One client, one student at a time.
Exactly.
Well, is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
Nothing I can think of right now. I appreciate this opportunity to just kind of share a few things that I feel like are important for us to continue to be looking at. And I really like this lens of multiculturalism and advocacy. I think that's one aspect that really doesn't get talked about that much. I think a lot of time is spent on how do you do it and state laws and all things like that. But the multicultural aspects of it really get left out a lot. So I'm glad we got an opportunity to talk today, kind of approach it from that perspective.
Absolutely. Me too. And I'm glad, like I said earlier, that you were available and that you were willing to give up some of your time. I know it's like, oh, I just need 30 minutes. And I feel like I know we've been talking. So I'm like, I appreciate your flexibility and you being available and giving of yourself to us. And so I know my students will be as gracious and thankful too. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, no problem at
I
all.
learned a lot. I learned some new information, so I know they will.